also lobbying Parliament and the media and influential institutions to promote Christian values.
I am curious, though, how you personally got involved with that. Obviously, you must be someone who's very aware of what's going on in the country, but to actually formally get involved like this, that's the next level. How did that happen?
I got involved, I think, became aware of issues many years ago when I was a university student, which were affecting indirectly the Christian opportunity to evangelize and to do things. And I think that since then I've worked through many different organization structures, but found that in order to react quickly, one needs to have an organization that is focused specifically on doing this sort of work, because sometimes it can take a long time to get approval to address a specific issue from an organization which is focused on a different purpose. And so that led us to, in year 2000, to found ChristianView Network. And since that time, we've been addressing these issues as they arise.
So, number one, you need to be aware of what is happening, in this case, legally. Every time you're talking about a bill, the prostitution bill, the hate speech bill, and the basic education laws amendment bill. So where do you look to be aware of, to see how this is happening? Or do you have representatives there in Parliament giving you the update of what's going on?
Well, look, there are websites where one can follow this, the parliamentary monitoring website, but I think we do that work for you. And if you get onto our mailing list, then we will send you updates just of the summary of what's important, because there's so many thousands of bills and issues which are arising in the political arena. We can't focus on all of these. We have to choose the ones that are really most influencing the social landscape and the issues that we as Christians are concerned about. And that's what we try to do as ChristianView Network. So we focusing on three main issues: the sanctity of life, sexual purity, and religious freedom.
Okay, so then you noticeable, like let's take the prostitution bill, for instance. You notice this is a bill and this is something that they're working on at the moment. Does it mean, in other words, that you have people at ChristianView Network who are legally qualified then to take it apart and to understand the implications of how this bill is set apart or set out?
Yeah, so look, we don't do this alone. So we do that in consultation with other organizations and other interested parties, see what they have to say. But actually, the example that you've just given, the prostitution bill, is actually what they're proposing is incredibly simple. This is only about a half a page of legislation, which is just basically removing the law as it is and allowing a free-for-all. And they're proposing to introduce this to Parliament by the end of March, which is would give South Africa one of the most radical situations in the whole world in terms of prostitution. That's comparable only with Belgium. So there would be absolutely no restrictions. So, yes.
Okay, let's get practical on that one. The implication of a bill like that, when you say there are no restrictions, here I am, I'm a Christian, I'm sitting in Tshwane, in Gauteng. How does it impact me?
Well, I mean, basically, because this bill has absolutely no restrictions, what we have at the moment is that because while prostitution is illegal, it's still happening to a certain extent underground, protected by criminal gangs and traffickers. But suddenly this is suppressed, and so it can maybe only happen in some places where there is a lot of crime or not a lot of police control. But this would allow it then to move into your next door neighborhood. Somebody could just set up a brothel in a house or a shop, or put up a caravan or something. And you could have people who are currently in criminal gangs now pimping, and it would be legal. So this is a very dangerous situation that I think most South Africans would regard as completely unacceptable, Christian or not, and really would endanger families. It's going to spread disease. And I think South Africans don't want this, but somehow the Ministry of Justice has been lobbied on this issue, and they are thinking that this is going to be a good solution. So I think we need to speak up very strongly to say no, that we don't want this. And if you want to speak up on that, the email address is deputyminister@justice.gov.za.
I have to try and understand. So what would the logic be from their side? Why would they even consider legalizing prostitution? What's the pros? Do they think this is good for the economy, or why would they want to legalize this?
Well, their main argument, and we listen to them carefully, is that the prostitutes are at risk of violence from their own clients who might beat them up and attack them. And because it is a crime, they can't report these crimes. They're already doing a crime. They can't report that violence to the police. And so by legalizing it, one would then be protecting the prostitutes from being beaten up by their own clients. Now, the thing is that, we would argue, well, that's not a good reason. The same situation with just about all crime, people are at risk for what they're doing. But even if one accepted that argument, and one said, okay, well, that is something that they want to change, they could fix that problem by just very narrowly changing the law to say, okay, well, if the prostitute reports a crime of being beaten up by a client, then the police cannot use that as evidence against them to prosecute them for prostitution. That would solve that problem. But it seems that they want to go the most extreme solution in the whole world, which only one other country has tried for any length of time, being Belgium. And they have a totally different context to us. So they don't have this problem of organized crime and out of control situation of the police as we have. So I think the impacts on us would be much, much stronger. And I don't think it's a good reason at all, but that is the reason that they've given. They've also put out a completely misleading argument that somehow this is required by international law. But if this was required by international law, then why are these other countries, all the other countries in the world, not also doing this? And the answer is really that there's a committee in the government which has completely misinterpreted international law.
I am wondering, so now we hear this and we realize that if we don't do something, my next door neighbor can run a brothel and I can do nothing about it. That is if we leave it. That would be the consequence of something like that. So now I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm saying, okay, I want to do something. You've given me address. So I send in my petition and hundreds of thousands of us do. I want to know, will it work? Do we actually have a say? Are they compelled to even listen to us or not?
Well, there's several opportunities that we have to influence the political process. Some of those opportunities in the case of the prostitution bill have already happened. But yes, we've had many examples where the government has listened to us in the past. So, for example, in 2017, there was a proposal to completely take away the powers of school governing bodies and give them to central government. Parents really complained against that, and the government has now come back with a new proposal where they kind of saying, well, we're going to give half the powers to parents and we'll take the other half for ourselves. So that is a less damaging proposal than what they had before. But now then that goes to Parliament. And then when it goes to Parliament, there are two houses and we have a second chance and a third chance to speak to the Houses of Parliament, each of those two houses, and persuade them to try and change things in that bill to make it less damaging. And that is another issue which we're dealing with at the moment, which is called the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. And there's later this month, there's going to be consultations in Limpopo and in the Free State. And if anybody wants to speak up on those, which I would ask you to do, the details are on our Facebook page, which is called Facebook/ChristianView Network. And And later on, there's going to be consultations in all of the other provinces. So I think we really need to speak up on these things. And many times in the past, yes, the government has listened to us. If we hadn't spoken up, we would be in a much worse situation than we are at the moment. So yes, we can make a difference, but no, they don't. They're not compelled to listen to us. So we have to put forward our arguments and try and motivate. And one of the difficulties is that the groups that are pushing for legalized prostitution, to take away the powers of parents, which are very, very well funded from overseas governments and international billionaires, have been lobbying for years to try and get these ideas onto the table. And so we need to lobby back again and say to our leaders, no, we don't want this.
Okay, let's get into that one that we were just mentioning, the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill that you say threatens parents' rights. Explain to me what's going on here.
Well, essentially, for those schools that are that have organized school governing bodies, they at the moment have the power to make an awful lot of decisions affecting their children's future. At the level of the school. And that allows the ordinary parent to input through their school governing body into the decisions that affect their particular school. They can decide on, for example, admissions policy. They can decide on which teachers they're going to appoint. They can decide on their school code of conduct. They can decide on their ethos, how they're going to do religious observances, what they're going to procure. And that bill would seek to take away a whole lot of those powers and to put them in the hands of the central government. And we have just seen that the best run schools are the schools where parents are the ones who are making those decisions. And so we actually would like more schools to come under the control of parents and to have more powers and to have more parents taking control of their schools, which they are legally allowed to do if they organize a school governing body.
So here I'm wondering now, of the schools out there, like percentage-wise, how many schools do have the parents part of the school governing body and taking part in this, or are government schools subject to what you are talking about, and maybe private schools are not? How does that thing work?
Well, I can't give you exact numbers. I would suggest you could possibly interview somebody from the Federation of School Governing Bodies, FedSAS. But what we do know is that the schools that are doing well are the ones where parents are involved. So we really encourage that, and we want more powers to those schools. We'd also encourage churches to partner with schools and to get involved in those schools and to strengthen what's happening there, and to encourage the parents who are in those churches to get involved in those school governing bodies. So I can't give you specific numbers without consulting with those people, or you could interview them. But what we do know is that parent power has a good influence on the school in every situation. But I think that for ideological reasons, a lot of politicians would like to have that control. And so, but we also believe that parents should be the ones who decide on all the details, like language policy or religious policy, and they are the ones best positioned to make those decisions. But particularly, we would like them to have a Christian ethos and to choose a Christian ethos, or at least have that as an opportunity within the school. Whereas if the government makes a one-size-fits-all decisions for all schools, then that can end up with something that you are not happy with about what is happening in your school.
Okay, we only have 2 minutes left. I realize that, but I want to ask you about the hate speech bill as well, because obviously this is something that doesn't only affect me when I'm on public platforms. It affects church leaders in what they even can say in their churches, isn't it?
Well, it's proposing to give a certain degree of protection for what is said inside a church, but it is rather vaguely worded at the moment, and we are lobbying very strongly to try and make that wording precise so that it can't be abused in order to silence people who have a different opinion to what is kind of popular in woke circles. So they've got a religious exemption clause, but the way that the bill is worded leaves it wide open for people to be accused or abused. And this is now potentially a criminal jail sentence, whereas the previous legislation would have just been like a fine or something, or a compensation that you would have to pay. And so that is much more serious. And next Tuesday, Parliament's going to be discussing this bill, and so please pray for that. And I think that we got to speak up for more. Firstly, I don't want this bill at all, but if we're going to have it, we want it to be very, very clear about what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Okay, Philip, if we want to get involved, we want to stay up to date with what is going on, not only be relevant, but be timely as well. How can we, like one place where we can go to, where we can stay up to date and then know where to go to take part?
Well, if you send an email to mail@ChristianView.co.za, then we will keep you updated, or otherwise that Facebook /ChristianView Network page will also keep you updated there.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put the link on Facebook so that you can go there, the Christian View Network Facebook link, so that you can go there and take part. And we encourage you, please, let's not sit back and hope for the best. The world has got an agenda and they're driving it hard. And if we sit back and relax, we're going to find out that we cannot live with the consequences of that. One last word, Philip. Speak to the country. What is it that you want to leave with us, just as an encouragement to be there?
Well, I think that one thing that absolutely everybody can do is to pray for the government. And we specifically got an instruction in 1 Timothy chapter 2 to pray for kings and authority. And I think we really need to do that because we've got about 6 pieces of policy and legislation that are planned to come in this year, which would very much change South Africa in terms of restricting our freedoms, restricting our powers, and undermining the family and Christian influence in education. And so that is something which everybody can do. Those people who are leaders of organizations and have capacity to do so, I think the thing to do is to speak out and to educate people, and also to speak directly to government in these opportunities that they're putting to consult us.
Christian View Network. Even if you just Google that, Christian View Network, let's be there. Next time they want to push prostitution or that hate speech bill or the basic education one, we'll be there. Let's get to your music. Here's Janet Rich with Joy, and that's exactly where it is in the presence of the universe.